Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. So today we're exploring autism and radical self-compassion
Yeah.
using some fascinating online resources we've gathered.
Mm.
And I'm already kind of sensing some unexpected connections here.
Oh,
Yeah, we're talking about how autism intersects with like religious trauma,
interesting.
imposter syndrome, and even like the unique challenges
Right.
faced by autistic adults diagnosed later in life. So,
Yeah.
ready?
I think what's particularly fascinating for me is how these seemingly disparate topics
Right.
can actually shed light on the diverse experiences of autistic individuals.
Sure.
So, we'll be examining the challenges they navigate,
Yeah.
the incredible strengths they bring to the table,
Mm.
and how this radical self-compassion can be like a real game changer
Totally.
in a world that isn't always designed with neurodiversity in mind.
Okay, so before we jump into the deep end here,
Right.
let's start with the basics.
Oh,
What is autism? We hear the term autism spectrum all the time,
yeah.
but what does that actually mean in practical terms?
So autism is a neurodevelopmental difference,
Okay,
meaning it affects how the brain develops and processes information.
got it.
And it's not an illness or a disease,
Right?
but a different way of being.
Okay.
And the spectrum part is crucial because
Yeah.
it highlights the vast diversity within the autistic community.
Mm-hmm.
There's no single autistic experience.
I see.
Each individual has their own unique strengths, challenges,
Yeah.
and ways of interacting with the world.
So it's not about fitting into a neat little box,
Right.
but about recognizing this wide range of human expression
Exactly.
within the autistic community.
And this is where those common misconceptions often arise.
Okay.
One persistent myth is that autistic people lack empathy.
Right.
In reality, many autistic individuals are deeply empathetic,
Mm-hmm.
but might express it in ways that differ from neurotypical individuals.
Makes
Another misconception is that autism is a childhood condition,
Yeah, I've heard that.
when in fact it's a lifelong experience.
That brings to mind the idea of masking, which we see discussed quite a bit in these resources.
Right.
It sounds like autistic individuals, especially women and girls,
Mm-hmm.
are often adept at adapting their behavior to fit in,
For sure.
but at what cost?
Masking is the constant effort to suppress natural autistic traits and behaviors
Okay.
to meet societal expectations.
Mm.
Imagine having to monitor and adjust your every word, gesture, and interaction
Wow.
to appear normal.
Yeah.
It's exhausting
Mm.
and can lead to burnout, anxiety,
All right.
and difficulty with self-acceptance.
Makes sense.
And as you mentioned, this is particularly relevant for women and girls
Yeah.
who often go undiagnosed
Right.
because they're so skilled at masking.
It's heartbreaking to think about these women navigating life with this invisible challenge, feeling like something's not quite right, but not having the language or understanding to explain it.
And this leads to the concept of the lost years.
Ah, okay.
The realization that so much of their struggles could have been understood and addressed
Yeah.
had they received an earlier diagnosis.
Right.
One of the articles we have
Mm.
shares a story about a woman who was diagnosed with autism in her 40s.
Wow.
She describes feeling like she'd spent her whole life
Oh, gosh.
trying to fit a square peg into a round hole,
Yeah.
never quite understanding why social interactions felt so awkward
Right.
or why she was so sensitive to certain sounds and textures.
It must be incredibly validating to finally have a framework to understand your experiences,
Absolutely.
but also incredibly frustrating to think about the time and opportunities lost.
It's a bittersweet realization,
Yeah.
and it underscores the importance of recognizing the signs of autism in women and girls
Mm.
and providing appropriate support early on.
It's like finally getting a map after you've been wandering in the wilderness for years.
That's a great analogy.
It can help you navigate the terrain better,
Yeah.
but it doesn't erase the challenges you've already faced.
And this brings us to the unique challenges
Right.
that autistic individuals often encounter navigating a world
Yeah.
not built for their neurodiversity.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the sensory overload of a crowded shopping mall,
Ugh.
the social cues that others seem to grasp effortlessly,
Right.
or even the simple act of making eye contact,
Yeah.
which can be incredibly uncomfortable for some autistic people.
It's like the world is speaking a different language,
Totally.
and you're constantly trying to translate,
Mhm.
which takes an immense amount of energy and effort.
Exactly. And this is where the concept of the autism tax comes in.
Okay.
It refers to the extra effort energy and resources required
Yeah.
to navigate a world that isn't designed for neurodiversity.
I thought I understood the autism tax in theory,
Right.
but reading about the specific challenges really brought it home for me. For example, one article describes how the cost of sensory-friendly clothing for children with autism can add up significantly.
Wow.
Another talks about the financial burden of specialized therapies,
Right.
which are often not covered by insurance.
Yeah,
It's like there's this hidden cost associated with simply existing in a world that isn't built for you.
these are powerful examples of how the autism tax plays out in real life.
For sure.
It's not just about inconvenience.
Yeah.
It's about a real financial and emotional burden.
Yeah.
And it highlights the need for greater awareness, understanding, and support for autistic individuals and their families.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the big ticket items either.
Right.
These resources also highlight the everyday challenges that many autistic individuals face.
Like what, for instance?
Well, one article mentions the fear of everyday objects, like escalators or automatic hand dryers. The unpredictability of the movement or the intense noise can be overwhelming.
It's about recognizing that what might seem like a minor inconvenience to one person can be a major source of anxiety or distress for another.
And then there's the challenge of asking clarifying questions in a work setting.
Oh, right.
The article explains how some autistic individuals might worry about appearing incompetent or annoying their colleagues, even though they simply process information differently and need a bit more time or explanation.
It's about recognizing that different minds learn and communicate in different ways.
Totally.
And that there's strength in diversity of thought.
These examples really illustrate how autism isn't just a diagnosis. It's a way of experiencing the world.
Right.
And it's a world that isn't always accommodating.
For sure. It is. And it's important to remember that despite these challenges, autistic individuals also bring unique strengths and perspectives to the table.
You're right. It's easy to get caught up in the challenges.
Right.
These resources also highlight the incredible talents and abilities within the autistic community.
Exactly. Autistic individuals often possess exceptional attention to detail, a strong sense of justice, and remarkable abilities in areas like pattern recognition and systematizing.
For example, one article mentions how autistic individuals have made significant contributions to fields like pharmacy technology, biomechanical engineering, and biomedical engineering.
Wow.
These are areas where their strengths in precision focus and analytical thinking truly shine.
It makes you wonder if some of the traits that make it harder to navigate a neurotypical world are like the flip side of the coin to these remarkable abilities.
It's like they're wired for brilliance in certain areas, even if those same wirings create different challenges in other aspects of life.
That's a great way to put it. And this brings us back to the concept of radical self-compassion, which seems especially important for autistic individuals, given the constant pressure to conform and mask their true selves.
I've been thinking about that.
Yeah.
What exactly does radical self-compassion mean in this context? Is it just about being nice to yourself?
It's more than just being nice to yourself.
Okay.
It's about a deep and unwavering acceptance of who you are, neurodiversity and all. It's about recognizing that your needs and experiences are valid and treating yourself with the same care and compassion you would offer a loved one.
So it's about acknowledging the challenges without judgment.
Yes.
And celebrating the strengths without reservation.
Precisely. And it's especially crucial for autistic individuals who may have internalized negative messages about being different or not good enough.
One of the articles actually uses the term internalized misogyny to describe how autistic women and girls may absorb societal expectations about how women should behave and then judge themselves harshly for not fitting those molds.
That's an important point. Internalized misogyny can be a real struggle for many women, but it can be particularly challenging for autistic women who may already feel like they're navigating a world that doesn't understand them.
So radical self-compassion is about untangling those internalized messages and replacing them with self-acceptance and self-love?
It's about recognizing that you are worthy of love and belonging, just as you are. And that your neurodiversity is a source of strength, not shame.
That's a powerful message. But how do you actually put radical self-compassion into practice?
Yeah.
Are there specific exercises or techniques that can help?
Absolutely. One of the resources we have outlines some practical steps.
Right.
One technique is to pay attention to your inner dialogue and notice when you're being critical or judgmental of yourself.
So it's about becoming aware of that inner critic
Exactly.
that we all have.
And then the next step is to challenge those negative thoughts with kindness and compassion. Just as you wouldn't berate a friend for struggling.
Right.
You wouldn't berate yourself either.
It's like having a compassionate friend on your shoulder, whispering words of encouragement and understanding.
That's a great image.
Yeah.
And another powerful technique is mindfulness.
Okay.
Paying attention to the present moment without judgment can help you connect with your inner self and cultivate a sense of peace and acceptance.
I can see how mindfulness could be particularly helpful for autistic individuals who may be highly sensitive to sensory input.
For sure.
Or prone to anxiety.
It can be a valuable tool for managing those intense experiences and finding moments of calm amidst the chaos.
This is all so helpful.
Yeah.
But as we delve deeper into these resources, I'm noticing some additional challenges that intersect with autism. Things like religious trauma, poverty, and even the long-term effects of COVID-19.
You're right. These intersections add layers of complexity to the autistic experience and highlight the need for a holistic approach to support.
For instance, one article explores the connection between autism and religious trauma, suggesting that autistic individuals may be more vulnerable to spiritual abuse or rigid doctrines that don't allow for individual differences.
That's a really interesting point. Autistic individuals often have a strong sense of justice and a literal interpretation of rules and teachings, which can make them more susceptible to feeling betrayed or disillusioned by religious institutions that don't live up to their ideals.
And then there's the intersection with poverty, which adds another layer of difficulty.
For sure.
The financial strain of specialized therapies, support services, and accommodations can be overwhelming for many families, leading to a vicious cycle of disadvantage.
Absolutely. We can't ignore the socioeconomic factors that can compound the challenges faced by autistic individuals. Access to affordable quality care and support shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a...
And even something like long COVID can have a disproportionate impact on autistic individuals, particularly those with sensory sensitivities or pre-existing health conditions. The ongoing fatigue, brain fog, and sensory overload can exacerbate existing challenges and make daily life even more difficult.
It's a reminder that we need to consider the full spectrum of needs and experiences within the autistic community and advocate for policies and practices that address these intersections.
You know, it's easy to get overwhelmed by the complexity of these issues. But I'm also struck by the resilience and strength of the autistic community. There's a real sense of finding power in shared experiences and advocating for change.
That's so true. And it speaks to the importance of self-advocacy for autistic individuals, empowering them to speak up for their needs, set boundaries, and access the resources they deserve is crucial.
One article actually highlights the work of an organization called Cheap ABA, which is dedicated to making applied behavior analysis therapy more accessible and affordable for families who might not otherwise be able to afford it.
That's a fantastic example of grassroots efforts to address the systemic barriers that autistic individuals and their families often face.
It's inspiring to see people coming together to create solutions and support each other.
It is. And it reminds us that we don't have to wait for large-scale systemic change to make a difference in the lives of others. We can start by listening to autistic voices, amplifying their stories, and advocating for their needs within our own communities.
Speaking of advocating for change, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the concept of autism supremacy, which we saw mentioned in a few of these resources.
That's a complex and controversial topic, and one that sparks a lot of debate within the autistic community.
From what I gathered, it seems like the term refers to the belief that autism is inherently superior to neurotypicality.
That's the gist of it.
Okay.
But it's important to note that many autistic individuals reject this ideology outright, seeing it as harmful and divisive.
Why is that?
Well, for many, it feels like a dangerous and potentially dehumanizing way of thinking that can lead to exclusion and prejudice.
Right.
It can also perpetuate the idea that autistic individuals are somehow better than neurotypical people, which can create a false dichotomy and undermine efforts to promote understanding and acceptance.
It seems like the focus should be on celebrating neurodiversity and recognizing the value of different ways of thinking and being rather than creating a hierarchy of superiority.
It's about acknowledging that all humans have strengths and weaknesses, and that diversity is what makes our world so rich and interesting.
This deep dive has really challenged my thinking and expanded my understanding of autism. I'm starting to see how many layers there are to this experience and how much more I have to learn.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, this is just the beginning of a lifelong journey of learning, unlearning, and relearning. It's about being open to new perspectives, challenging our own assumptions, and engaging in ongoing dialogue with the autistic community.
You know, as we wrap up this part of the discussion, I'm realizing that we haven't touched on the topic of person first versus identity first language, which seems to be an important consideration when talking about autism.
That's a great point. It's a nuanced conversation and one that's constantly evolving within the autistic community.
From what I understand, some individuals prefer person-first language, like person with autism, to emphasize that autism is just one aspect of their identity, while others prefer identity-first language, like autistic person, to acknowledge that autism is an integral part of who they are.
Exactly. And there's no right or wrong answer. It ultimately comes down to personal preference and respecting the language that each individual chooses to use.
So the key is to listen to autistic voices.
Precisely.
And let them guide the conversation.
And to be open to learning and adapting our language as the conversation evolves. It's all about creating a space where everyone feels seen, heard, and respected.
This deep dive has been so insightful. But I'm wondering what comes next. What can we do to create a more inclusive and supportive world for autistic individuals? How can we each contribute to this collective effort? It feels like we've been handed this incredible toolbox filled with understanding, and now the question is, how do we actually use it to build a better world for autistic individuals?
That's a great way to frame it. It's not just about acquiring knowledge, but about putting that knowledge into action.
So where do we even begin?
Well, I think it starts with each of us committing to ongoing education about autism and neurodiversity. Read books, listen to podcasts, follow autistic creators and advocates on social media. The more we understand about the lived experiences of autistic individuals, the better equipped we'll be to challenge our own assumptions. And advocate for meaningful change.
It's about being active participants in this conversation.
Absolutely.
Not passive observers.
And it's about recognizing that education is a continuous process. There's always more to learn and unlearn as our understanding of autism evolves.
And beyond personal education, what are some concrete steps we can take to create a more inclusive world?
One powerful action is to create inclusive environments in our homes, workplaces, schools, and communities. Think about sensory sensitivities, clear communication, and flexible routines. Even small adjustments can make a big difference.
For instance, one article suggested providing quiet spaces or sensory-friendly options at events or gatherings to accommodate those who might feel overwhelmed by loud noises or crowds.
That's a great example. It's about anticipating needs and creating options that allow everyone to participate comfortably.
And I imagine clear and concise communication is crucial as well.
Absolutely.
Especially in work or educational settings.
Being mindful of our language. Avoiding jargon or idioms and providing clear instructions can go a long way in making autistic individuals feel understood and supported.
And, you know, one of the articles mentioned the importance of promoting self-advocacy skills for autistic individuals.
Oh, that's so important.
It's about empowering them to communicate their needs, set boundaries, and navigate the world with greater confidence.
That's such an important point. Self-advocacy skills can be incredibly empowering for autistic individuals. And we can support this by listening attentively, respecting their choices, and advocating alongside them when needed.
It's about shifting the power dynamic from speaking for to speaking with,
Exactly.
and creating a more equitable and just society for everyone.
And it's about recognizing that autistic individuals are the experts on their own experiences. We can learn so much from listening to their stories, perspectives, and insights.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful, but I can't help but wonder, what about the future of autism research?
Right.
Are there any promising areas of study that might lead to new breakthroughs in understanding and support?
That's a great question. The field of autism research is constantly evolving.
Okay.
And there are many exciting areas of exploration.
Like what?
For example, researchers are investigating the role of genetics and environmental factors in autism, as well as developing new therapies and interventions to address specific challenges.
So much of what we've discussed today centers around creating a more inclusive and accepting society. But are there also advancements in the medical field that could potentially improve the lives of autistic individuals?
There are definitely researchers looking into potential medical interventions and therapies.
Okay.
But it's important to approach this with caution and ensure that any advancements are developed ethically and with the full involvement and consent of the autistic community.
Because ultimately the goal shouldn't be to cure autism, but to support autistic individuals in living fulfilling and authentic lives.
It's about celebrating neurodiversity, not trying to eradicate it.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm struck by the immense complexity of autism. It's not a simple diagnosis with one-size-fits-all solution. It's a multifaceted experience that encompasses a spectrum of strengths, challenges, and perspectives.
I couldn't agree more. And that's precisely why radical self-compassion is so vital. It's about embracing the complexities, accepting ourselves and others as we are, and working together to create a world that celebrates neurodiversity in all its forms.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
For sure.
But this is just the beginning of our journey. I encourage everyone listening to continue exploring these topics. Challenge your own assumptions and be a voice for understanding and inclusion.
Remember, even small acts of kindness can make a big difference. Whether it's offering a listening ear, educating yourself about sensory sensitivities, or advocating for policy changes, every step we take towards a more inclusive world matters.
This has been an incredibly enriching deep dive. I'm so grateful for your insights and expertise.
Oh, thank you.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery.
Yes, thank you.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep embracing the beauty of human diversity.